Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. We are here at the Dell booth/suite at Computex 2026, which is awesome. This is the first time I can ever remember Dell being at the show. But we are here to check out, of course, their new Alienware gaming monitors, including a monitor that, to me at least, is probably the most exciting product I've seen announced, the new 39-inch 5K 2K OLED with the RGB stripe glossy panel coating. We're going to check out that in just a moment because yeah, maybe I switched to that LG model slightly too early. I just made a video about moving over to that model and then I've seen this new model. So we're going to check that out in a moment. They've also got a new 34-inch QD OLED ultra-wide, which is an upgraded panel spec. We're going to take a brief look at that because they've actually sent me one as well. But anyway, let's get into it after this.
Our 2026 Computex coverage is brought to you by MSI and their GeForce RTX 50 series graphics cards, including flagship models like the Supreme Liquid and Vanguard, both of which delivered class-leading results in our testing. Powered by NVIDIA's Blackwell architecture, RTX 50 series GPUs are the ultimate way to experience ray tracing, delivering more realistic lighting and visual fidelity than ever before. You'll also benefit from AI-powered DLSS 4.5 frame generation and NVIDIA Reflex for smoother, more responsive gameplay. So for more information on MSI's GeForce RTX 50 series of graphics cards, please check the links in the video description. Finally, a big thank you to G.Skill for helping to make our Computex trip possible this year. G.Skill offers an outstanding range of DDR5 memory with AMD Expo and AMD Expo featuring ultra-low latency support specifically designed to maximize AMD Ryzen performance. So for more information, please check the links in the video description.
Well, we're here to see one of the products that I am most excited about at Computex 2026, which is the Dell Alienware AW3926QW, which is their brand new 39-inch 5K 2K tandem W OLED panel. So I recently made a video update on Monitors Unboxed talking about the monitor that I currently use, which is essentially the LG version of this, using their tandem W OLED 39-inch 5120 by 2160 resolution. I think it's a really actually excellent panel format for gaming. It's large, it's immersive, it's better than the 34-inch sizes for ultra-wides that we've seen so far. Well, Dell have come out with their own version of this, and it's not just a copy of LG's model. They're actually using an exclusive panel version, which, as you can see from the text up here, is the world's first 39-inch 5K RGB stripe tandem OLED. So essentially what this means is that they're using a panel version that does not have the white subpixel. So LG's version, RGWB subpixel layout, with this version, RGB stripe subpixel layout. And that's not a typo, that's not an error in their spec sheet. Dell are very, very confident that this is an actual panel variant that uses RGB stripe. So that makes it's going to have slightly better text quality than we've seen from the RGWB versions. I think the RGBWB is fine, but hopefully this will provide slightly better text quality. And the other major difference compared to the LG version is the glossy screen coating. So with the LG model, of course, matte, this is a glossy version. And it's not just the usual glossy that we see from LG display. We've seen that as true black glossy, for example, real black glossy on Gigabyte monitors. What Dell are telling me is that this actually has an additional anti-glare layer to it. So if you've seen our coverage of some of the glossy tandem W OLEDs before, you'll know that while they have excellent black levels in all conditions, they're also extremely reflective. So if you have a light shining on the screen, a lot of light is reflected back. I've sort of had a look at this panel shining a light on it, and it does seem to have reduced reflections compared to what you'd normally see from a tandem W OLED. It's probably a little closer to QD OLED in its reflections, but of course without that ambient light reflectivity, the purple tint, the raised gray sort of blacks. We'll have to have a closer look at that in the studio environment to sort of see if there's any trade-offs associated with it. But of course, I'm really happy to see a glossy version of this 39-inch panel. I also found out some other quite interesting information. So we've seen RGB stripe monitors at the show using the W OLED technology from ASUS, for example, with their 32-inch 4K monitor. Those monitors were True Black 400 with 250 nits full screen and 1000 nits peak brightness. That's because ASUS told us that it's hard to get the same brightness spec from an RGB stripe monitor. Dell haven't seemed to have those exact same problems. They tell me that this monitor will go up to 1300 nits peak brightness and 300 nits full screen, which is higher than those 32-inch 4K monitors, despite this being the same sort of height as a 32-inch monitor, so it's similar pixel density, which is Yeah, quite interesting how they've been able to get those higher brightness specs. I asked them whether that was potentially related to cooling benefits or something like that. They didn't seem to think there was anything special about their cooling solution that enabled a high level of brightness, but they have been able to achieve it. So what we should be seeing is similar brightness from the RGB stripe to other RGWB panel versions. It also has quite a number of features that we haven't seen from Dell monitors before. So they've added in an anti-flicker mode, which is great to see because LG Display W OLEDs tend to have a bit more flicker than you'd see from QD OLEDs, so anti-flicker just raises the minimum refresh rate in the VRR mode, which would helpfully improve performance. It also supports Dolby Vision. It's still a dual mode monitor, so 5K, 2K at 165 Hertz, and it'll have the 2560 by 1080 mode at 330 Hertz. It also uses the same AW30 design as previous Alienware ultrawide, so it's that. I think it's quite a nice design in terms of its build quality, in terms of its material quality. It's a slightly bluish tint. It's quite hard to see in this lighting because they've used purple lighting. But in sort of traditional lighting, it's dark, but not quite fully black. You probably have seen that from some of the reviews. Unlike LG's, and by that I mean unlike LG Electronics model, Dell actually offer a 3-year warranty. So with LG, you only get a 2-year warranty, and burn-in is questionably covered. Dell are quite quick to say 3-year warranty, burn-in is covered here. And I think one of the key features for people, the key benefits to this particular monitor is its price point. This will be available in June, or I think maybe slightly later in some territories like North America, but at a price tag of just $1,099 US. So one of the comments that we saw a lot on the LG review of the 39GX950B, I think that's what it's called. Cameraman Balin, who's getting much better at monitor names, just gave me a big nod, so I think I got that right. So that monitor is, of course, $1,799 US. So this is going to be $700 cheaper for essentially the same monitor panel. I think that is absolutely incredible. You don't often see monitor manufacturers going that competitive on pricing. I think if it holds up in terms of its performance, if the RGB stripe is just as good as the RGWB version, then this is going to be the monitor to get, especially because a lot of you asked for glossy and Dell are delivering that here. So that is incredible news for gamers. It's going to make this panel format much more accessible. And it makes a lot more sense because the 34-inch versions, like 34-inch ultrawides, have always been in that sort of $800-ish range. Some of the more premium ones have been slightly over $1,000. You know, we've seen the new 360 Hertz V-stripes, they're about $1,100. This should have always been a price competitive monitor with those models. Just for whatever reason, LG made theirs super expensive. Another interesting thing they told me is that actually this will have this panel version. So the 39-inch 5K, 2K with RGB stripe and glossy. Dell has a short exclusivity window on this, so you're not going to see someone like Asus or Gigabyte come out with a version of this immediately. They told me for a couple of months they have the exclusive rights to this panel format. Not all 39-inch panels, of course, as LG has one, but this specific one that we're seeing here. A couple of other features, USB-C with 90 watts of power delivery, DisplayPort 2.1, UHBR20. Dell have gone all out with every feature that I've seen. The only potential downside I've seen from flicking through some of the OSD features and using this monitor briefly is its lack of adjustable OLED care settings. So similar to previous Dell monitors, there's really nothing you can adjust in terms of like the auto dimming features, the screen shifting, that sort of thing. There's only the pixel refresher. I assume that will also be the case on the final versions because we're sitting here at the start of June and this monitor will be available within the next month or so. So should be a final version. Maybe they'll update that with some, firmware updates or something, but that's the only real downside I've seen. This is an excellent looking monitor, even with the studio light that they've provided that's shining directly on me. The reflections and everything like that in this copy of Resident Evil looks amazing. So I'm super keen to check this one out. I don't have it yet in the studio, but I should be seeing it soon. So yeah, this is priority number one for me when I get back and whenever I'm sent one. So they've got one other monitor here that I want to look at, so let's go and check that one out.
Also supporting our Computex coverage is Be Quiet and their excellent new range for 2026. Some of their latest offerings include power supplies like the Dark Power 6, AIOs such as the Pure Loop 3, additions to the light-based lineup, and a great selection of peripherals. Be Quiet's entire range is German designed, enjoying excellent build quality and silent performance. So for more information, please check the links in the video description.
Also here we have the Dell Alienware AW3426DW, the 2026 version of their 34-inch QD OLED ultrawide. We've been testing versions of this for many years, dating way back to the AW3423DW that I loved for many, many years. So yeah, this is a new panel version, largely the same, well, in fact, they tell me it's effectively identically designed to the previous model, but just with a panel boost. So we're seeing the new V-Stripe QD OLED, changed from the Q-Stripe up to the V-Stripe, along with, it's still a 3440 by 1440 resolution, but now at 280 Hertz. So earlier in the year, we looked at the V-Stripe QD OLED in this format with the flagship 360 Hertz models from MSI and Asus. Those are priced a little over $1,000, I think around the $1,100 to $1,200 range. Dell are offering, I guess, a slightly lower cost version of this at 280 Hertz. They tell me this model should be priced more around the $800 US range. So pretty similar to things like the AW3426DW that we tested last year. That monitor had the triangle RGB subpixel layout. It had worse reflection handling because it didn't have the new panel treatments and things like that, 2H coding instead of 3H coding. All of those things have been improved with this model. Again, you get the RGB stripe subpixel layout format and a slightly higher refresh rate. So at the exact same price, I think that's a pretty decent deal. We're going to, of course, test this. Actually, we'll be able to test this as soon as we get back from Computex, because basically, as I was flying out for the show, Dell sent this to my house. So I think I've heard that it is actually at my house right now. So as soon as I get back, I should be able to give you all the performance information. But what I'm expecting from this monitor is it to perform very similarly to those 360 Hertz models we saw at the start of the year, but just at a lower 280 Hertz refresh rate. So the same True Black 500 specification, 300 nits full screen, 1300 nits peak brightness in this model, exactly the same specs that we saw from that previous version. So yeah, Dell keeps producing what I believe to be some of the best ultra-wide monitors on the market, and hopefully this one holds up in testing as well when we get to it back at the end of Computex. And that does it for our booth/suite coverage of Dell at Computex 2026. Both of the monitors that we've seen here at the show are super exciting to me, and we will be hopefully reviewing those very soon. So stay tuned for that right here on the Monitors Unboxed channel. They didn't have really any other displays outside of the ones that they've sort of shown here. These were the two main monitors that they were focusing on. I believe they also announced a couple of VA panel ultra-wides. Not too sure about that. You'll have to check the Dell website for more specs and information, but essentially it was the two OLEDs on show here at Computex. So yeah, we've got plenty more monitors coverage from all the Computex announcements right here on the channel. So take a look at some of those other things. We've got the MSI model with the 4K 360 Hz panel. We've got, what have we got? Asus with their 32-inch 4K monitor, the 24.5-inch 1080p display. We've got Gigabyte with some new panel refreshes and stuff like that. Plenty of other coverage. So yeah, take a look at that. But anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.